Excellent. Cool. So welcome to Getting Personal with Pluto on this Friday with Mercury retrograde and F Mercury. Ah, that's how I feel about it. Big time. Anyways, hello, Lillian.
Hello, Tracy. Oh my goodness. So it's a beautiful Venus day, Friday. We're about to get scorched down here in the South United States. The temperature is going to go up to 115, which I would wager is in the 30s or something Celsius. And yeah,
Crazy.
exciting. Yeah, Northern Hemisphere, exciting times. Very damp.
Um, yeah, we're not have you can have some of our cold weather. It's rained every day this week. But I think the hot weather's trying to come in because we've had some pretty good storms. So
Yeah.
I'm just
So
trying
we
to
talked.
ground myself.
Oh yeah, please do. I'll, if you don't mind, I'll kind of talk a little bit about the Pluto resonance for me, because as somebody who studied evolutionary astrology, Pluto is how the divine comes to us, and I have an image that I drew years ago when Pluto was in Sagittarius, going over my sun and my first house of a dinosaur, like a T-Rex, and a person in that T-Rex's arms. And the idea was if you're picked up by a dinosaur, you're probably going to have to surrender rather than fight the dinosaur. And I thought that was really important because of the power of the divine reaching out to us and how difficult it is from the inside to feel what that is trying to accomplish or come through us. So to take a step back, my understanding of Pluto is that it's our soul through lifetime after lifetime, and that its position, the polarity of the sign that it's in, tell you a lot about what you can do to align yourself with your chart. And that as you go through it, you look at the nodes, you look at different things than other studies look at. And so I have a deep understanding of my Pluto. And in the studies that I've done, we actually used to do the descent of Inanna, which is a little bit of a Demetra George, but there's another author who wrote about it too, where we would let go of the 7 labels, woman, United States citizen, sister, daughter, etc., to get to the center, to mimic Inanna's journey down to the bowels of hell. And in this hell, Pluto was Ereshkigal, the goddess of the underworld. And her deal was you don't come before her without an offering. And Inanna in the story becomes the offering. And there's a component of that Pluto where you have to be willing to sacrifice yourself, to molt, to become something else. And before we got started, I think it encapsulated our process a little bit, but I was describing how spring looks beautiful and we idealize spring. And as we were saying, all of the babies are threatened by being eaten. The sensation of a seed leaving its protective coating can feel very threatening. The transgression from under the ground to into the air is really quite different. So there's a lot of inside and outside feelings. Inside feeling can be quite intense, or you can be subjected to intensity from outside. And so in that way, I find Pluto very grounding because it's asking me to go to the core of who I am and come from that place. And the best part of the Inanna ritual is that when you come up and you're leaving that sacred place, you choose rather than put back on without any thought what labels you're going to wear. And you choose how to aspire to things that better fit your personal chart.
I like it.
Yeah.
One thing that I wanted to say for people in general comment about the outer planets and transits is there are a lot of factors that contribute to how you'll react or how it'll affect you. And one of the things that is important, I guess, I'm not quite sure how else to phrase that, but um, how you work with the energy of an outer planet transit, one of the things that has a big effect on that is how it's placed in your natal chart.
Right.
And what I mean by that is if it's not actually talking to any of the personal planets in your natal chart, when it comes along by transit, it can be extremely difficult to process or to understand or to even learn what the hell it's about because you don't have that knowing in the natal chart. And I learned this the hard way with a Neptune transit. Neptune doesn't talk to any personal planet in my chart. I have no control over it. It just aspects my ascendant and everybody else gets to talk to it. So when it came to face my son, it led to beautiful, wonderful,
Right.
amazing changes in my life. 100%. I would
Yeah.
never have discovered acutonics without it.
Wow.
But to understand it took so much longer because there's no personal relationship to that planet in
Right.
my natal chart. So with Pluto, you might be experiencing the same things. It's not talking to any personal planets, and all of a sudden it's coming along. If you have early degrees in your chart, it's coming along and having a personal conversation with you. Well, in the beginning, it might be speaking a language you just don't understand yet. And
Right.
so your learning curve of the Pluto transit will be steeper.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that.
No, it's critically important. If there's nothing that Pluto is working with in your chart, you're not going to feel it.
Yes. And then if it is making personal relationships,
Connections. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, right? Is because it's having a personal conversation, not only is it talking in your chart, but that relationship, whatever aspect it's making to a personal planet, is being repeatedly through your life
Exactly.
activated by transit. So you get to know Pluto over
Yes.
and over again through those
Yeah.
changes. And I mean, the moon is going to do it monthly. So that planet's always having a conversation with Pluto.
Right.
Yes, so it's there and you're already having it, whether you know it or not.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. But that was to the feeling. You may not feel it. I remember when I was going through that, I got most of it after, like when I think about a Pluto transit to the sun, which is specifically what I'm talking about, that's kind of or the sun, the ascendant or moon, I would say, even though it has its effect on all of the other planets, personal planets rather, um, if your security is being challenged, emotional security through the moon, if your vitality is being challenged or shaped in a really powerful way um, through the sun, or if how people see you is being challenged, those are really tender spots, short and curlies kind of. And so there may be more of a desire to figure out how to live within this transit. But yeah, it could be, I mean, I've seen Pluto transits, take away things that people thought that they needed so that the door could open for the things that actually would help them grow in the next series and or in the next iteration. And managing change, which is what would come with a Pluto transit, I think you'd at base level, you'd say you would feel a change. Managing change becomes really important. And so when I think of managing change, I think of reminding yourself, like you were saying, of the knowing, reminding yourself, if you've been here before, here's how we handled it. If you haven't been here before, that's good to know. How can you learn about this particular setup to leverage it? And then the reminder of where you're going. I often find with goals, if I don't clarify what it is that I want and reconnect with that yearning. Oh, I hate how it's making my little hand go. This is reconnect with my yearning. if I don't do it, I won't understand why I'm putting myself through all of the irritating things.
Well, and I'd like to add actually before that point
Yeah.
is there has to actually be an accepting of it. And I think that's actually really important when we're talking about the fixed signs. So
Oof.
anybody who's having this transit to a fixed sign planet, you need to accept that the things under the purview of that planet need to change or are going to change or are under transformation or however you want to approach that. The acceptance is the first step.
Yeah.
And so, like we saw with the Uranus through Taurus, again, affecting the fixed
Yeah.
sign people, in a more personal,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
difficult way. That resistance to letting the process happen with a fixed sign is far more likely. And so to, really emphasize that there's going to need to be some kind of transformation, whether you want it or not. So just there has to be an acceptance first.
Right, right. And I agree with that. I call it surrender a bit. And then I think about it with the dinosaur, that I'm not gonna, I won't win, you know.
Well, and I think surrender is. I just said this in a consult yesterday. So
Oh yeah,
all the outer planets require a certain amount of
that's
surrender
fair. That
and
is fair.
faith
Yeah,
and trust.
yeah,
Because they are part of this way larger process that we don't get the answers to necessarily. And we're
exactly.
not
Yeah.
meant. We are not. Uranus on purpose gives you the thing you didn't think of.
Right.
Like it's because there is a certain amount of surrender that needs to happen and trust and faith and flexibility.
I love that. I love that. Should we talk about it through the example of the new moon?
Yeah, did we want to pull that chart up? So this is actually how we even got to this topic was when I saw the new moon chart for this Thursday's
Yeah.
new moon in Leo.
Yeah.
I was a little bit um, jarring for the amount of stuff happening, you actually directly aspecting the new
Yes.
moon itself,
Yeah.
right? So can we see that?
It's beautiful. I can see
Is
it.
that pretty okay?
Yeah.
Great. So when we look up at the top, can you see my cursor too?
I can. Yeah. Thank
Yay. So when we look up at the top, we have the sun and the moon at 2 degrees Leo. Well, Pluto's like partile right on the other side here in Aquarius.
you.
But then we also have, they're trying this little situation with Saturn and Neptune and Aries over here.
Right.
And also like all the outers were having a conversation with
Wow.
the sun and the moon. So to me, when we look at any chart, any moment, it has a future. It's not just that moment, right?
That's
And so when we look at a chart like this, this is going to carry through going forward. We also had, this was active in the sun's ingress chart into Leo
right.
as well. So
Yes.
not only is this active for the new moon, this is active through the Leo season,
Mm.
that Pluto opposition
Yeah.
for everybody,
Yes.
much more directly if you have planets at those early degrees.
Yeah.
But you have Venus square Mars in this chart. This new moon chart is active,
Right.
and there's very little Earth happening
Right.
here. So we are, Mars in Virgo is not the best grounding placement, right? The tendency to Mars isn't to ground, and Virgo loves to ground if it can do it the perfect way. So that combination is not necessarily going to be helpful for an entire chart that has no
Right.
Earth, right? Like if
Understood.
you're
Yeah.
depending on Mars and Virgo to help us ground, it's not
And
going to be the most effective grounder
and
of
if
the
I can
planets.
add at the conjunction with the South Node, it's here to finish something. So it's not
Hmm.
necessarily bringing in, new stuff. You're trying to finish.
Yeah,
And
this
I got
is
to
where
tell
she's
you,
looking.
yeah, thank you. The balsamic, we talked about the phases earlier. And so the phase from balsamic to new, generally, I don't necessarily feel those. And this time, every moment before the new moon felt like I was carting garbage out to a bin and dumping it. And yeah,
So what Lillian's referring to is, so you have the moon here with the sun. When it goes through this last 45 degrees is the balsamic phase. So as the moon entered Leo, it is automatically on impact
yes,
opposing Pluto. And so
yes,
that supercharged that last few degrees of that
yeah,
balsamic phase for sure. Yeah, I could totally see that. So it's a lot, and it's a quick little snapshot of if you're somebody who has something in earlier signs, and it doesn't really matter what mode,
right,
because Pluto's in a fixed sign, Neptune and Saturn are in a cardinal sign, and Uranus is an immutable sign. So
yeah,
everybody, it doesn't matter
we're all
which
affected.
modality, everybody is, if you've got earlier planets by progression or natal, is
Yeah,
getting an outer planet, is having a natal planet conversation, whether you want to or
yeah,
not.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
fascinating. That's fascinating.
yeah. So now it's going to depend on which planet Pluto's talking to,
Yeah,
depending on what kind of thing. So at its core, and I think you said this beautifully when you talked about Pluto, it's going in to dig up from the depths what needs to be looked at, good,
yes,
bad, ugly, right? To get to the heart of, like, Pluto always wants to take us to the deepest place that stuff is
yeah,
and unearth the thing that's key at this point for you to look at, right? So to the sun, it's going to have to do with who you are. And there's a huge, because of with the new moon and the aspect of the sun, there's a huge message and authenticity in that for everybody, right?
yeah,
But if it's
exactly.
your sun,
Yeah,
then that's a very personal journey for you at this point in time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And what would you say about if it's to the moon?
Well, if it's to the moon, there's a lot of interpretations I've seen talk about women being an issue, right? Um, I'm going to keep talking until you're done with your sip. But also that emotional security. So I perceived, like, when it was happening, I had an opposition to my moon with moon in Cancer when Pluto was in Capricorn. It just felt really unsettling. What comfort I could derive was not from what was familiar, if that makes sense. And so I had to look for new sources of comfort. I had to think about what made me feel safe. I had to retouch into what made me feel safe. And for a while, it continued to dwindle what made me feel safe. And I really had to kind of put faith into those goals, those dreams that I had, so that I could get excited about it, even when it was irritating.
Well, and tell me, if, because I haven't had that particular transit, not since I would have been young. I was looking at my chart in my mind, like, yeah, I would have
Yeah.
been pretty young when Pluto was in Libra.
Yeah.
But when you think about the themes of the moon, I mean, it can be power struggles with women. It can show you where you might be having power struggles with women for sure.
Yeah.
But Pluto digging as deep as possible to your moon is that's generational trauma stuff that's likely to
Absolutely.
come flying forward, right?
Yeah.
And so digging not only to the deepest depths of what you've buried in this life, but all the way
Yeah.
back, you know? And so I love, I think it's Howard Susportis that said, the reason why the outer planets take so long is that if they hit us all at once, we couldn't survive the amount
Yeah.
of change that they require and the amount of work
Absolutely.
they require, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why the themes become so big. And so and I also love, I think he's also the one that said, um, you might not feel a Pluto transit, but at the end of it, when you look back to who you were before it, you'll see how much you have changed.
Yes.
You
I
know,
heard I heard that and I experienced it.
oh, cool.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think it's because I got the sun and the moon, both transited. So whatever happened before is gone.
Well, and the thing to consider is if it is going to be aspecting your moon, is that if you have buried things that, and not dealt with them, it could be shocking when it
That's really
comes up,
yeah.
so if you have a moon in Leo, if you have a moon in uh good Lord,
Aquarius, uh,
Aquarius,
uh,
if you have a moon, what are the other two fixed signs?
Taurus and
And
Scorpio.
Scorpio, good Lord, just totally,
They're just holding on.
those are going to be the hard aspects where you don't get a gentle choice about facing the
Well,
things that Pluto's gonna.
you do get a gentle choice in how you react to it. If you can say to yourself, and I remember this with clients during the Uranus Taurus transit, sometimes if you're really fixed, just knowing change is coming will really help you make plans, which is what the fixed signs are good at. And so you can be gentle. You can say, change is coming. I'm going to be uncomfortable. You can switch where you wear a watch or a bracelet because that's a slight discomfort that's going to resonate with what's coming in. Whatever you can do to open your ability to make change can be gentle, that part.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%. Um, from my experience with the outer planet transits, the if I'm to compare a square to a trine,
Right.
because I had the Pluto trine through Capricorn,
Yeah.
um, to my sun and to itself. So the things that needed to be looked at sort of floated to the surface.
Mm,
They came in through
love that.
conversation. They came in, there was just
Yeah.
the issues themselves were no less gentle.
Right.
It's just the how they came into consciousness was more gentle.
I love that. I love
You
that. So
know,
yeah, so
Whereas with the opposition with the Pluto to my Venus, the realizations came in hard and fast.
okay.
But you're right. How I reacted to those was my choice. And it wasn't, I'm not going to say like they weren't hard events. They're just like the things that I needed to look at rushed at me
Yeah.
as opposed to just floating in gently in a conversation. So that
Right.
was the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got a little excited about, like, we're talking about the transits, which are the Ptolemaic, basically, except we're going to probably toss quincunx in there, right? So we've got the conjunction, which is when Pluto is sitting right on top, approaching or separating from a planet that is personal to you. And the personal planets are everything up to Saturn. So my very educated mother just spat, is usually how I say it. Uh, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter.
So
So the conjunction is what we started with. You pointed out the trine, which is the one of the considered benefic transits, the opposition, which is considered one of the difficult ones. We haven't talked about the square and we haven't talked about the quincunx, but we'll get to those.
yeah. The quincunx of Pluto is interesting because it really is, to me, in witnessing it, and experiencing it, the thing that came up most often for me and in consult was weird power issues,
Yeah.
um, that threw your ego off balance. So it
Yeah.
was very much, and it didn't actually matter the planet because
Mm,
Pluto does like to police ego big
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So if there was some kind of and if your ego was getting in your way, or if it was guiding the journey, Pluto comes along and is like, back to authenticity, put that mask away,
So
um
interesting, isn't
and
it?
yes, so the quincunx just makes it so that things don't work out until you sort out that ego problem. That seems to be how I've seen that play out.
Well, and that, in evolutionary astrology, that's the part that really gets me, because I think about Pluto as being like the almost a direct source of the mysteries of the universe or God. And then I think about Saturn as how we construct civilization, the rules we want to follow to make things work, kind of the edges or the container we create for each other. And then the sun, I think, is where a healthy ego develops and is personally made, but can be made through other people's opinions and cultural impact. So when I think about that Pluto, and I think about Saturn, for instance, I think the Saturn believes that it should be making the rules. And there's a lot of tension when Pluto and Saturn get together, because the question is, are you going to follow the rules of the collective, or are you going to follow this new direction that is coming in, and this new information that's coming in? And so there's real tension that is different from the ego tension of the sun, but has that kind of impact of, we are talking about powerful energies, powerful universal energies that come at us, generational, like you were saying.
Well, and as you were talking, I just had a massive realization about, so right now we've got Pluto and Saturn by transit are having this conversation. And when you were talking about Saturn versus Pluto, Saturn is in charge of the rules, but
Right.
on Earth,
Yes.
Pluto is governing the
Right.
outer realms, right?
Right.
And what we're seeing right now, when because we keep hearing these messages about authenticity, authenticity,
Right.
authenticity, like in every arena, right? Is that is a word that's the buzzword since in 2025, I'm going to say, um, especially in marketing. And we are with the Pluto and Saturn having that direct conversation. We're seeing how our earthly structures and
Yes.
rules don't align necessarily with the
Exactly.
universal and
Exactly.
structures. Yes, and that is what is being unearthed by Pluto. One of the things that's being unearthed
Right.
by Pluto collectively at this time.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that tension, and it is in relationship now, but I just wanted to point that out because, the way that we think of how the planets behave is, common hierarchical situations that we get into. The planets have a hierarchy, and that hierarchy benefits them in myriad and different ways. I think of that game Risk, or any of the kind of Avalon Hill games where you need to know the point power of your submarine and how many soldiers you have in a certain area. And it is kind of like that. It benefits from being strategic. From that first point that we made when we started this series, in charity and giving up something that hurts a little because you're offering devotion to this planet that's incoming, to actually planning how to use the planet or steward the planet or give to the planet or align with the planet. So there's a lot of opportunity that comes with it because it's so powerful.
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw what it did during, like, with in the Capricorn and working with Saturn, and what we're dealing with the fallout of that now. And that's
Yeah.
another thing to realize with Pluto, like, you often don't see it, and it's in a hindsight sort of
Right.
thing, right?
Right.
Because first of all, it is so all encompassing at the time. If we think about what we went through, I mean, so I'm talking about the lockdown, birth of COVID, that
Yeah.
time while we
Absolutely.
had Pluto and Capricorn and Saturn, and Pluto kept talking to each other. And we had, like, so in that time unearthed were the cracks in all of our institutions, right?
Yes.
And now we're trying to it's almost like there was a genie let out of the bottle, but nobody knows how to deal with the genie now, and it's wreaking havoc.
Yeah. It is
That's
like that.
right. That's sort of how yeah, from an observer point of view, how I see it.
Yeah.
um and we, you don't really, you can go back in history. Pluto really is a great tool for going back in history and looking
Right.
at what it's doing the last time it's in this sign. And a great book to read if that kind of stuff interests you is oh, me trying to remember a proper noun is not going to happen. That part of my brain doesn't work if you don't know that about me. But you know which one I'm talking about.
Uh, hmm.
I'll remember it and
Yeah.
I'll put it in the description after. So
Perfect.
yes, there. Then we don't have to waste any time with me trying to
It's
remember it.
only because there are quite a few excellent, excellent Pluto books. I don't want to start whipping through them all.
1,000% true. Yes. And Pluto, I mean, the thing that's fascinating just from an astrology community point of view is that it only got discovered not that long ago.
Right.
So a lot of times when we're looking back in history, it hadn't been discovered yet.
Yeah.
We can see where it was,
Yes.
when we do the math and the calculations and use it astrologically in that way. But I find it interesting that with the more traditional avenues of astrology, I'm not quite sure how they're rectifying, or I don't know how they're working that in, because there's nothing else. You can't go back to Valens and figure out what he said about it because
No.
he didn't know about it. So
No.
this is
Yeah.
a whole new frontier of how do we incorporate these outer planets and have them work with yeah, how do we work with them? I wanted to correct something for the astrology police. Saturn and Jupiter aren't personal planets.
No.
They can be called social planets, and they
Right.
can be called another social word I don't remember right now. But
You're right.
here's
You're
the
right.
rule. To
Mhm.
no, but to your point, because I consider them personal in the sense that they can rule a house in your chart by traditional standards.
Yes.
Like if you're using traditional rulerships,
That's it.
Jupiter and Saturn have rulership no matter which astrology you're using. And so, in that way, to me, they
I
become
love it.
personal because they are. So, if you're having an aspect from Pluto to Jupiter or Saturn, and Jupiter or Saturn rules a couple houses in your chart,
Yeah.
you're going to have some kind of a Plutonian thing happening with the house that those planets are in charge of. And in that way, they become personal.
So smart. So smart. And it actually reminds me because I wanted to ask you about that. So I love Rob Hand's designation of planets. And so he gives Mercury and Venus and the moon to personal planets, which to me, I imagine a personal planet doesn't have to be related to the community. You are self-driven. You must find out what you want to do rather than follow the pack because you are working with your personal self. And then he gives Mars to that same designation that you shared with Saturn and Jupiter, because while you can give your effort, and in evolutionary astrology, Mars is the answer to Venus's call for something. Venus says, I want it, and Mars goes and gets it. Well, it turns out that if you're, I don't know if you watch South Park or whatever, but like that character Cartman, if you are a Cartman and you're only going to use your Mars for yourself, you're going to run into trouble because it's actually a community benefit. And I find often one of our difficulties in figuring things out when we try to do things as a collective is that we fail to understand how a collective operates and how we have to link together. And again, I love the visual metaphors. So I've talked about this before. Otters, when they sleep at night, they go to a kelp forest and kind of wrap their babies up in kelp. And they also hold hands. And I've got this little puzzle of otters holding hands. But the reality of it is, if that last otter needs to put a brick down and that first otter is getting the directions on how to build something, and it goes through all the hands to the last otter, that's where I think we run into the difficulty. Our language is so abstract. I've just spent like a week trying to figure out what love means because it's so personal, but it's a container we all use. And you never know what's in there, right? So I'm trying to like, oh, okay, I'll bring that down a little bit because I want to know from a lived experience what's happening versus here's my version. We're going to stick to that, even though you've never heard it or don't know what it is. So, anyway, all of that swirls around in the mind. And just to kind of cap it off in this running amok kind of way, blind spot is something that kept coming up when we were talking about how it feels when the outer planets come, my sense is it feels like there's a blind spot. And another way I could think of it visually is I've been seeing videos of right whales sailing under somebody's surfboard from above, from a drone. And you see this eeny weeny little tiny surfboard and these giant whales like sailing underneath. And all I can hope is that the people on the surfboards aren't seeing them. Do you know what I mean? Because it's so intense to have that much energy passing by. I'm getting goose pimples. So blind spot I wanted to work in somehow.
Oh, I like that. I like that. I like it a lot.
So
Yeah.
Mars is also community and blind spot. That's the summary there. TLDR.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because a while back I started looking at the planets from like a manifesting your best life sort of point of view.
Yeah.
And so to what you were saying, what I realized was that, Venus is actually collecting all of the information from the sun, the moon, Mercury, and the earth, right? And packaging that to give that information to Mars to go out and get what we truly want,
Yeah.
And so, and it all started because somebody had said something about Jupiter, an astrologer on social media had said something about Jupiter is not just about manifesting, and went off on a rant. And then I started to think, and I actually took a training too on working with manifestation. And I realized that each category they'd given fit a planet, right? And so that took me down this rabbit hole of trying to understand it, right?
Yeah.
But so like you say, you've got all these inner planets, and what defines that is that they come between us and the sun. That's really, it's like it's a literal, it's literal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mars is the first one that connects the Earth to the outer planets,
That's
right?
right.
So that's exactly, it's literal. And then next are Saturn and I know Jupiter and Saturn, right?
Yeah. And
I'm not
Saturn,
used to having a mic in my face.
I know. Tech, I'm telling you, tech is after us. Saturn being the last visible planet, and then that great idea of the sky being the only media that we had for millennia. And so
Right.
the last planet carries all of that liminal energy and ending.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Rule, etc.
That comment about Saturn being the only one that's visible, it brings out the Virgo in me, and not from you at all, but I've heard this so many times when I'm listening to lectures and people say, they talk about, oh, especially from a, Hellenistic perspective or a traditional perspective, oh, they couldn't see anything past Saturn, blah, blah. It's like, well, actually, if you read the literature, they could see Uranus sometimes, but they didn't realize it moved. They thought it was a fixed star. And so I'd be curious to know if there's because there's other lore that goes with other fixed stars. Is there a Uranus fixed star lore?
Fun.
Right.
Ooh.
I'd be curious to find that out. And so Uranus has actually been in the consciousness forever.
Really good.
But I love to think that, it showed up to give us these clues.
Yes.
To where we are now, because to me, Uranus, we did not have internet until the birth of Uranus. So giving the internet to Mercury, well, it's part of the story, but I'm sorry, it didn't get spread around the world until Uranus came into our consciousness. So and what I've noticed is in people's natal charts, when there's no relationship between personal planets and Uranus, there's likely no connection to the internet. Like there's no desire to be part of that world, right? It's
I've
interesting.
seen that in clients quite a bit, and I usually applaud them. Like, lucky you, you don't have to do this internet thing.
I always want to trade. I'll trade you. Here, have my Uranus conjunct my ruling planets.
I'm sure I would be so mad. I'm sure. I love this breakneck pace.
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, so I don't even know how we got on here about the order
The
of
personal
the
planets versus the community planets. We're just trying to figure out their impact as they relate to Pluto. So a personal planet like Venus, for example, I got married when Venus when transiting Pluto was conjunct my Venus. I'm a beast.
Oh my gosh, that's wild.
We're married.
That's phenomenal.
Married. He went down to hell and got me.
I love that. Well, and I wanted to say one of the things, because I'm at the end of my Pluto to
Yeah.
Venus story, but again, this whole like living with quincunxes and not seeing things straight on can be interesting. But so there was a lot of work around Venus for me, whether I wanted to or not. Like the issues just kept coming up. And so it was like, oh, let's talk about that. Let's deal with that. Let's look at that. But one of the things that came up and especially in through this manifestation investigative stuff and also in writing the book, why I wanted to include a bunch of stuff about Venus and
Yeah.
doing work with Venus before you move on to, you know, if you don't know what you want, work with Venus before you start going to look for a
Beautiful.
relationship,
Beautiful.
was that I have discovered, and all of these opportunities were presented to me in client work for me to see the power of Venus and like the literalness of that, like in terms of a transit is hilarious. And I didn't recognize it as part of the Pluto transit until just recently. But
Mm,
I just can't, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. Like I would see charts where the signature was, say, Mars conjunct the sun.
mhm,
But maybe it was in Libra or
mhm,
in Taurus, or
mhm.
where Venus was a really loud part of the story.
Yeah.
And I'd
Yeah.
always wonder who's winning this. Is Mars the
Oh,
thing that's winning this, or is it Venus that's winning? Like in terms of the personality,
interesting.
are they going to be very Martian in their energy, or they is Venus the thing that is getting presented to the world, right?
Right.
And every effing time it was Venus. And they
Right.
did not know how to manage the Mars energy every time. And I thought, we have downgraded Venus to just being a feminine romance, flowers and candy. I'm sorry if you are underestimating the power of Venus. This Pluto transit for me, I'm
Boy.
here to tell you,
Yeah.
you are missing a huge part of your story
Yeah.
by not understanding how strong Venus is
Yeah.
in our
I
in our
agree.
makeup, right?
Yep. I
Yeah.
agree. And uh I always heard Venus will get what she wants by healthy or unhealthy means. And so it's important to identify what you want because you will be subjected to Venus's getting what she wants, or you will be benefited by getting Venus what she wants.
Well, and the thing that I needed to learn to understand and what I would like to share with people is like the more intentionally you do that, first of all, the more intentionally you do things, the faster you get to
Yeah,
the, where you're trying to go because you're
yeah,
doing it on purpose, right?
that's right.
Um, yeah, and so and that's sort of the thing that through the Pluto transit I really started to notice was um and just how strong she was and how she was working whether I asked her to or not,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know.
I love
And
that.
usually she ended up in eating a chocolate bar because, Venus rules sugar.
I don't know about that. I mean, yes, 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 yes. And you're so aesthetic. Do you know what I mean? And there's such a lovely, like, I'm becoming accustomed to the part of Virgo that loves to present things beautifully, that undeniably has a Venusian tint to it. And so there's something about, like you're saying, honoring all of that that Venus brings.
Well, yeah. Well, and I was just going to say that to describe the difference between intentional versus
Okay, yeah,
not intentionally led to me eating a chocolate bar when Venus was trying to get my attention.
perfect.
Intentionally
Yeah,
led to me creating coloring books and
yes.
heart opening mandala coloring books. I'm going to tell you, the cravings for chocolate decreased when I was doing that work.
Not that either of them are better or worse than the other. Like
No, but
chocolate's
one was unintentional and one was intentional, and that was
love
the
that.
difference.
That's so perfect. That's so perfect. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's so perfect. Yeah. So yeah, so my experience, I'm trying to think of where we're at now. Um, there's a
We
sextile relationship with my Venus and Pluto right now, or there will be a sextile relationship shortly. And I don't really feel that. I don't really feel that, but my chart is like everything's kind of glommed together. It's not a stellium, but the connections are all sort of supercharged and all happen at once. And so it's hard for me to distinguish or to leave out a sign. Uh, Pluto, I really felt because it is kind of a standout. It only has a T square and a trine to Jupiter to get it. I feel like I don't like to talk about my astrology because right now it's so good. I'm not trying to brag. And of course, good is ridiculous, right? Because it's just
Well,
big.
and the reality is that good or bad, it's a lot. And right now we're really being bombarded with a lot of energy, so whether your chart is being transited directly by the outer planets,
Yeah.
or not, if you're picking up on the collective energy, it's just a lot. And we don't have anything to ground us. So people are not grounded. You can just see it in how people drive. Like there's
Yeah.
very little cohesion to what people
Yeah.
are doing because they're not grounded,
Yeah.
And so when and the problem with that is that when there's all this overwhelming energy and you're not grounded, it has the potential to activate your nervous system a lot more, and there's just less flow, and yeah, a lot
Yeah.
more anxiety maybe.
Right. Right. And, people want to get back to normal. That's just a very, we love homeostasis, we require it. And nothing feels normal now. And I think that that's kind of the overriding message is that it doesn't feel normal because it's not normal. And we are building a new normal. And I usually ask folks to really think about not right now, not 6 months from now, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What do you want to look back and see that you did in whatever direction you prefer to intentionally address this change that's coming, to intentionally engage with it? And it can be resistance, right? We often start with resistance, but it is said that when things are difficult, resistance just makes it last longer.
And to that point, something that's really fascinating is that I there's certain things that I've learned about Chinese medicine that I hear them and I'm like, oh yeah, right. But they don't, come to the front of my brain
Sure.
really fast. And one of
Yeah.
them is, so the lower back, the knees and the shoulders are all connected. Like the points are often the same if you're dealing with those issues. And also when you go to find acupuncture points that are for, dealing with um, transformation or whatever, it's the lower back
Yeah.
that it holds a lot of that energy. And so I
Yes.
don't know what I was reading, but it said something about lower back pain and transformation.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like I have not had lower back pain like I've had in the past 2 years since I was young.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, okay. So if you're having lower back pain, ask yourself, are you transforming right now?
Right.
And are you accepting that? Right.
Yeah.
Also, knees.
Yeah.
Are you having a hard time stepping into the transformation and moving forward?
Oh, wow.
Take a look at that.
Yeah.
Shoulder pain. Are you overthinking it? Are you
Right.
overthinking the transformation and getting stuck in your head about it?
Right.
Those are all keys and clues to if you're being called to transform. You don't even need to look at a chart. Your body's going to talk to you about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's worth 10 minutes of your time to sit down and ask that body part what it needs.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Tell it it's going to be okay. Tell it
Yeah.
everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Imagination lays the train tracks for reality. And so it's really important to find the positive vibe. I mean, it doesn't have to be our positive vibe. Everyone's got their own. There was something you were saying that sparked a notion, a few things about the body stuff. Fascinating, fascinating. If you can't lay down on the floor, which often shifts gravity enough to kind of let your body settle in a different way and can disrupt that pain, especially for the pelvic region. You can imagine it if you can't do it, because that might open something. Then another notion I had, oh, it just came back and went away again. Yeah, the grounding is so fascinating, right? Because when you think about Pluto, especially with regard to the stories we share around the Greek myth, Persephone, right? Transgressive will pull you down into the earth. Why would you want to ground into that? I don't want to ground into that. Thank you very much. If there are monsters that are going to take me under. So it really is what you're saying. Imagine, I'm sitting down. I'm going to imagine how the chair's kind of holding me up in addition to me pushing down into it, because it's that connection and that groundedness that can be enough. It's, it doesn't have to be a grand gesture. I described the descent of Inanna, if you're in a car, you can just feel how you're sitting, and are your heels on the ground? And, you can try to put your palms on your legs or something like that, just however it is to kind of start that direction of feeling the ground underneath you. Yeah, I
Well,
think that, yeah,
and you can take that a step further, and especially around the Pluto thing, because the grounding is not, you don't want to ground into Pluto, you want to connect to the earth, because that's where
exactly.
you have to live, right?
Exactly.
And
Yes.
so something that can be really powerful is to, concentrate on the Pluto energy, however you want to do that, but also allow whatever you want to release from Pluto to be purified out through the earth. Imagine all that stuff you're trying to let go of, go back into the earth and let it be purified and let go
Exactly.
of it that way. That's a much more gentle way.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to actually face all the things you need to let go of. I think that's
No,
a myth
no,
we've been fed, that you need to sit in and look at every last thing. It's like,
no,
nope,
you don't. Because
you
we don't
don't.
because we don't understand, because our language is abstract. So we're taking it even further away from reality. And because the process is not a verbal one. It's not a verbal process. I love that you said that. Yeah, understanding is beside the point.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
we're at the end of an hour, sister. We did it again.
Hey, I love it. I love it. Yeah, this was great. So we did Pluto conjunct. To me, that's the one you'd really feel. Pluto sextile, maybe you'd feel it. Pluto trine, I think you feel. I think it surfaces stuff like you said. Opposition, interesting stuff coming from outside. The square, didn't necessarily talk about it, but I feel like we use that. Um, yeah, that's everybody. The
Yeah,
quincunxes of,
the square is going to create some kind of conflict, whether it's inner or outer,
there
to
we
have you
go.
face whatever you need to face with Pluto. The
Yeah.
opposition is going to shine a light, allow you to be objective about the things that need to be unearthed, and
Yeah.
allow you to take a look at them from. And the thing to know about the opposition is that if you're not used to being objective and taking a look, not everybody's chart it has any objectivity built into it in that
Right.
way.
Right.
And so what will likely happen, and pay attention, is that you will draw that energy into yourself from
Right.
outer to see, for you to be able to see it and deal with it.
Yeah.
And so there could be some kind of a face off with somebody who represents Pluto to whatever
Yeah.
planet, right? And
Yep.
it's giving you an opportunity to see it outside of yourself so that you can
Exactly.
acknowledge it within yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this
Yeah.
was great and such a different vibe, that Pluto, than any of the other stuff we've been talking about.
Well, thanks anybody who watches. We're going to sign off. And
Yep.
next week we have a very special guest, Greg Paul Kosnick. He wrote a book called Starstruck Style. He wrote there's a sequel as well. And he looks at, in those books, he likes to look at sun sign and fashion and style. We're going to talk about drag queens. Yeah, Greg's
I can't
awesome.
wait. I can't wait. Yeah. So we'll see you next
Yes.
week.
Yes. And hopefully Mercury gives us a rest from
Yeah.
the shenanigans. Thanks,
Yeah.
everybody.
Thanks.